It was a regular afternoon when a black woman, peacefully sitting on her porch, became the target of a confrontation she never saw coming. But this wasn't just any neighborhood dispute. This was an aggressive encounter with fake HOA cops who had no idea who they were dealing with. The audacity of these so-called officers trying to drag her off her property was shocking. Little did they know, they had just picked a fight with the wrong person. What they didn't realize was that the woman wasn't just some unsuspecting neighbor. She was an undercover CIA agent with a network of backup already in place. As tensions escalated, her calm demeanor hid the storm that was about to hit. With the woman's training and quick thinking, she had already anticipated trouble, and it wasn't long before the real power behind the scenes started to reveal itself. As the situation unfolded, these fake HOA cops quickly realized they were way out of their depth. But what happens next? What unfolds when they discover who they've really injured? Stay tuned to find out how this unexpected confrontation turns into a game of cat and mouse with dangerous consequences. Will they back down, or will this escalate into something far worse? Keep watching to see how the story unfolds. The woman, whose calm expression didn't betray a hint of fear, had been living in this quiet suburban neighborhood for years. To the other residents, she was just another face, a woman who preferred the peace of her porch, enjoying a good book or chatting with neighbors. Little did they know, she was much more than that. Her life wasn't what it seemed, and she had been trained for far more intense situations than this. The men who approached her, in their ill-fitting police uniforms, were part of a shady HOA operation that had been harassing residents for months. They weren't real officers. They were imposters looking to exert power and control over the community. But they didn't expect her to stand her ground, and certainly not in the way she did. As they tried to drag her off her porch, she quickly assessed her surroundings, her training kicking in with military precision. What they didn't know was that she had made sure to set up a network of surveillance cameras, and her backup wasn't far behind. She had known that these fake cops would try something like this sooner or later, and when they did, she would be ready. But as the situation escalated, she realized that the group wasn't working alone. There were deeper forces at play, and they were more dangerous than she had imagined. What were these fake HOA cops really after? What had they planned all along? The tension was only building, and the woman's next move could either end the confrontation or send it spiraling into chaos. As the fake HOA cops tugged at her, the woman's mind raced. Her eyes flicked toward the house across the street, where an elderly neighbor had been watching from her window moments before. The woman had seen this before, the casual surveillance, the feeling of being watched, even in her own neighborhood. She kept it quiet, but something wasn't right, and today, everything was finally coming to a head. The men, clearly growing frustrated with her resistance, started shouting for her to comply. They demanded she step away from the porch, but she didn't move. Her hand subtly brushed against the phone tucked in her pocket, one of many measures she'd taken in case something like this happened. A simple press of a button would alert her backup, but she wasn't ready to make that call just yet. She needed more information. What were these men really here for? And why now? Her mind went back to the strange interactions she'd had with certain residents in the days leading up to this. There had been a newcomer, a man who moved into the house down the block. Quiet, but with an air of authority that seemed out of place. He'd asked a lot of questions, all innocently phrased, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he was digging for something. Had he tipped off the fake HOA cops, or was he involved in something bigger? The situation was escalating. The fake cops were getting more aggressive, their patience wearing thin. But in the back of her mind, she knew they were just pawns in a much larger game. Somewhere, someone was pulling the strings, and they were waiting for her to make a mistake. The tension was palpable now. The fake HOA cops were growing more desperate, their voices rising in anger as they tried to force her off the porch. One of them grabbed her arm with more force, and that was when she knew this wasn't just about intimidation anymore. They weren't trying to scare her. They were trying to hurt her. She could see it in their eyes, the flicker of violence, the lack of any real authority. They were just bullies with a badge. But the woman was far from intimidated. Her pulse steadied. Every movement she made was calculated. She knew she couldn't afford to let them take control. Slowly, she turned her head, glancing at the street corner. Her backup was close, but they wouldn't be able to reach her in time if things got physical. She needed to buy a little more time. Just then, a car pulled up across the street, screeching to a halt. Two men in suits got out, their eyes scanning the scene like hawks. It wasn't the backup she was expecting, but it was a backup nonetheless. Something told her they weren't here to help the fake cops. These men looked too polished, too calm, as if they were used to dealing with situations like this. They didn't make a move immediately, but their presence was enough to shift the atmosphere, a quiet threat hanging in the air. The fake cops hesitated, momentarily distracted by the new arrivals. It was just the opening she needed. In a split second, she made her move. She jerked away from their grip and turned to face the men in suits. But before she could say anything, one of them raised a hand, signaling her to stop. "We don't want a scene," he said, his voice smooth, controlled, but there was something unsettling about the calm in his tone. Her instincts flared. This wasn't just about some fake HOA cops. This was something much bigger, and now she was right in the middle of it. The woman knew the danger had escalated, but she also knew that her next move would determine everything. She could feel the walls closing in, but the stakes were higher than ever. Would she be able to outsmart everyone here, or had she finally met her match? The clock was ticking, and the moment of truth was fast approaching. The woman held her breath as the suited man's gaze locked onto hers. The words, "We don't want a scene," echoed in her mind, but before she could react, the unexpected happened. The fake HOA cops, who had momentarily paused, suddenly lunged at her again. The man in the suit stepped forward in a swift, fluid motion, his hand raised in a silent command. The fake cops froze, caught off guard. For a moment, it seemed like the power had shifted, but then the real shock came. From behind the men in suits, a third figure emerged from the shadows, a woman. She was dressed in plain clothes, but her presence was unmistakable. She moved with the same controlled confidence the woman on the porch had seen only once before, in her own training. This new arrival wasn't just part of the backup she'd been expecting. She was a player from an entirely different league. The woman from the porch felt the ground shift beneath her. She had no idea who this new figure was, but her instincts screamed that things were about to take a turn she hadn't anticipated. The woman in plain clothes locked eyes with her, and for a brief second there was an understanding between them, one CIA agent to another. But then the surprise hit. The new woman spoke, her voice cold and precise. "You're not the only one with backup." The words sent a chill down the woman's spine. The situation had just gone from dangerous to deadly. Who was this woman, and what did she want? Was she on her side, or was she part of the very system the woman had been working to uncover? The fake cops were still standing there, unsure of what to do next, but the real tension lay in the air between these two agents. Whatever was about to happen would change everything. Her backup was supposed to be her lifeline, her advantage, but it seemed that someone had been pulling strings from behind the scenes, and now the game had taken a whole new direction. The stakes had never been higher. The real question was no longer about the fake HOA cops. It was about who was really pulling the strings behind them. The tension in the air was so thick it was almost suffocating. The woman on the porch stood frozen, trying to process the new arrival, this second CIA agent who had just dropped into the middle of the chaos. She was no longer sure who she could trust. The game had changed, but how? The agent in plain clothes took another step forward, her eyes scanning the scene with unsettling calm. Then, with a quick motion, she pulled out an envelope from her jacket. She didn't hand it to the woman on the porch. Instead, she threw it to one of the fake HOA cops. "Take a look at what's inside," she said, her voice steady but sharp. The fake cop hesitated, his eyes flickering nervously. Something was off, but before he could open it, the agent snapped, "Now." He reluctantly tore open the envelope, revealing a set of documents that clearly weren't meant for anyone's eyes. His expression shifted from confusion to fear as he read through them. It was clear these weren't just neighborhood power plays. They were sensitive government documents, documents tied to a covert operation the woman on the porch had never imagined. She stepped forward, heart pounding in her chest. "What is this?"